Good day, everyone. Thanks for your time attending this mandatory AODA training session, which stands for the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. The leadership team is committed to developing and enforcing accessibility standards within the workplace. We hope you can learn about our commitment to such standards and what obligations and rights you have as an employee at the workplace. Before starting, let's review today's agenda. What is the AODA? Examples of disabilities, who requires accessibility training, and the types of training required. Today's training should help you achieve the following objectives: gain basic knowledge about accessibility and understand how it affects individuals with disabilities, be able to identify the different types of AODA training required for each level of the organization, and learn what steps you can take if you encounter people with disabilities in the workplace. So what is the AODA? The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act is a law that was established to develop and enforce accessibility standards. Under AODA, a disability is a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. Let's quickly review some examples of disabilities: blindness or visual impairment, deafness or hearing disabilities, speech impairment, physical or mobility disabilities, brain injury, epilepsy, intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, mental health challenges, and reliance on a service dog or mobility device. Now, let's discuss who requires accessibility training. All employees and volunteers, whether full-time or part-time, anyone involved in the development of organizational policies, and anyone who provides goods, services, or facilities to customers. In the next few slides, we will learn about the different types of training required under AODA. This includes customer service training, accommodation program training for managers, supervisors, and employees, and recruiting module training for managers, supervisors, and recruiters. The training requirement depends on the role you play in the organization. Next, we will learn about the customer service training module and some tips when assisting customers with different types of disabilities. Customer service training is designed to learn how to serve customers that require accommodation, which includes the following: allowing assistive devices for people with physical challenges such as wheelchairs, screen readers, hearing aids, canes, and walkers, allowing service animals for these types of groups, vision loss, epilepsy, autism, and anxiety disorder, and provide goods, services, or facilities to people with disabilities using equipment accessible in your organization. In the next few slides, we will learn about the standard procedures when you assist customers with different accommodation needs. People with physical mobility disabilities. When trying to assist customers that have such conditions, ask before you help, as people with disabilities generally have their own way of doing things. Try sitting down if you are communicating with someone who uses a wheelchair or scooter. This will allow you to make direct eye contact with the person at the same level. Refrain from touching items or equipment such as wheelchairs or canes without permission. Don't leave the individual in a dangerous position if you have permission to move their wheelchair. For example, leaving the individual facing a wall or in the path of opening doors. And think ahead. Remove any items that may act as a physical barrier. For example, boxes are left in an aisle. People with vision loss. When trying to assist people with vision loss, don't assume the individual can't see you. Many people who have low vision still have some sight. Identify yourself when you approach and speak to the customer. Ask if they would like you to read any printed material out loud, for example, a schedule, fees, etc. Be precise and descriptive when providing directions or instructions. Offer your elbow to guide them if needed. If they accept your elbow, lead, do not pull. If you need to leave the customer, let them know. Tell them you will be back or say goodbye. And don't leave the customer in the middle of the room. Guide the customer to a comfortable location. People with hearing loss. When trying to assist people with hearing loss, make sure you are in a well-lit area where they can see your face and lips. Attract the customer's attention before speaking. Try a gentle touch on the shoulder or wave your hand. Reduce background noise if your customer uses a hearing aid. Move to a quieter area if possible. Ask if another method of communicating would be easier, for example, using a pen and paper. And speak directly to your customer. If accompanied by a sign language interpreter, do not speak to them. Instead, speak to the customer. Speech or language disabilities. When trying to assist people with speech or language disabilities, don't assume that a person who has a hard time speaking doesn't understand you. Ask questions that can be answered with yes or no. Don't interrupt or finish your customer's sentences. Be patient when they are speaking. Confirm what the person said by summarizing or repeating. Don't pretend if you are unsure. And speak directly to the customer. Do not speak to their companion or support person. Learning disabilities. When trying to assist people with learning disabilities, be patient. People with learning disabilities may take longer to process information, understand, or respond. Provide information in ways that work for your customer. For example, some people may find written words or math difficult to understand. And be prepared to rephrase or explain something again in other ways. The individual may not have retained the information the first time. Mental health disabilities. When trying to assist people with mental health disabilities, treat them with the same respect and consideration you have for everyone else. Be confident, calm, and reassuring. Respect your customer's personal space, and limit distractions that could affect your customer's concentration. Loud noise or crowded areas can cause stress. Assistive devices. When trying to assist people who use assistive devices, do not touch or handle any assistive device without permission. Do not move assistive devices out of your customer's reach. This includes canes, walkers, etc. And inform your customer of any accessible features appropriate to their needs. For example, public phones with TTY service, accessible washrooms, elevators, etc. Service animals. When trying to assist people who use service animals, don't touch or distract a service animal. It is a working animal and has to pay attention at all times. Ask your customer if you are unsure if the animal is a pet or service animal. And if the service animal is prohibited by another law, explain why and discuss other ways to serve them. For example, leaving the dog in a safe area or serving your customer in another area where the animal is allowed. Now we will move on to accommodation program training for managers, supervisors, and employees. This module is to educate the rights and obligations of all parties at the workplace under the AODA requirements. Management members should make the firm's hiring, performance management, and other workplace practices accessible to people with disabilities. Employees should follow the instructions on how to serve customers requesting accommodations. The management team should implement the Ontario Human Rights Code, which relates to people with disabilities, in the organization. Keep this section of the code in mind when making organizational decisions, and actively update the organization's accessibility policies. When an employee requests an accommodation, the below procedures must be followed. Step 1. Employee submits a request for accommodation to their manager. Step 2. The manager speaks with the HR department to discuss accommodation plans. Step 3. Establish the accommodation plan and regularly follow up with it. Let's quickly review some types of workplace accommodations. Modified hours or days or reduced work hours, modified or different duties, modified or ergonomic workstations, working from home, human support, technical aids, and communication aids. Workplace accommodation. In Ontario, there are 2 legislative pieces requesting employers to provide reasonable accommodation to employees when a request is received: the Ontario Human Rights Code and the Occupational Health and Safety Act. There are 2 types of workplace accommodation: workplace injury-related and workplace non-injury-related. Managers and supervisors must follow standard accommodation procedures for workplace injuries. This includes helping the employee with first aid kits, sending them for health care if needed, or calling the ambulance whenever necessary. reporting the incident and filling out an incident report or WSIB Form 7, submitting the Form 7 to WSIB and providing a copy to the Human Resources Department, paying the full shift on the injury date even if it's only half a shift or less before the injured employee leaves, requesting the employee to contact you for an update after seeing a doctor, requesting the employee to return a Form 8 signed by the doctor, and discussing the accommodating duties and responsibilities of each party. If the employee requests an accommodation based on the workplace injury, the below steps must be followed: keeping track of the incident information, requesting a Form 8 from the doctor and returning a copy to the manager, updating the manager right away after the treatment, providing the estimated return to work date or request the accommodating duties with a statement of the limitation, filing Form 6 if there's a loss of earnings, and working closely with the WSIB case manager, return to work specialist when needed. Now let's talk about the standard accommodation procedures that managers and supervisors must follow for non-workplace injuries. This includes contacting the employee and requesting a brief discussion between the employee, manager, and Human Resources Department, providing instruction on the personal leave policy if the leave is more than 1 week, requesting a functional ability form if accommodation is requested, providing possible accommodating positions based on the employee's limitations, and discussing an accommodating plan with a specific time frame and restricted duties. Employees must also follow standard accommodation procedures for non-workplace injuries: requesting the leave of absence or accommodation, providing the requested documents to managers and supervisors, and maintaining regular communication with the manager and updating the recovery status. In the next 2 slides, you will see a few examples of accommodating forms. Finally, let's discuss the recruiting module training for managers, supervisors, and recruiters about our AODA obligation in the recruiting process. Develop inclusive and accessible workplace environments, foster acceptance of diversity in the workplace, create more diverse placements, notify your employees and the public about the availability of accommodation for applicants with disabilities, make hiring decisions in compliance with AODA, and have the AODA statement in job postings and other hiring processes. We have completed the AODA training session. Should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Human Resources Department.